Hello and well met, folks. This is Laren with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Happy Friday. I hope you guys are able to play some games this coming weekend. So I want to go back over some more character creation topics. I've done some builds, some automation stuff, and now I want to kind of get into some nitty gritty of character creation. I'm going to kind of go over some multiple topics. Some of this stuff will be helpful to you. Some of this stuff you guys might already know. Or if you're new to Fantasy Ground, some of the stuff may not make sense depending on what I'm going to go over. So the first things first is I have a character sheet over here that I built manually using drag and drop method. So this particular character, I did not use the character wizard. I actually did drag and drop from the character options on the right hand side of the interface. And this is a level 8 rogue. He's a human criminal. He's basically an arcane trickster. That's the subdomain or the subclass. His name's Bralem Dravis, and he's kind of a bad guy. I want to say like a villain. So quite often when we run adventures, we'll get an NPC that will have some or maybe all of the features that the to run that particular character for an encounter. But there are times when you may have to build a character to have access to all of the different features that you would expect from a player character from an NPC. So sometimes it's better just to make a high level NPC. If it's a humanoid or some sort of like character that's an NPC, but you need to play it with more detail. So that way you have more access and more actions on this back tab that you would from an NPC sheet. So I'm going to actually take this NPC and put it in as an NPC and compare what kind of differences you're going to have here. You're never quite going to get exactly the same amount of automation and the same amount of options as you would from a character between an NPC. So I'm going to go into the actual NPC section here, and this is the area where those are stored if you have your content loaded. I just have the player's handbook loaded right now, so there's really not very many creatures in here until the new monster manual comes out. Or you could use Monsters of the Multiverse, because that's pretty much similar to how the content is going to be for the future. So let's go ahead and I'm going to make a new group. It's something I always do when I make my own content. So I'm going to go to add category, and then I'm going to edit the category. Right now it says group 1. So I'm going to name it as custom NPCs. And I always do this so that when I'm making content, I have separation between the content I have loaded and the stuff that I've built myself. This way I can kind of differentiate and separate that out, and you use the group filter up here so that you're not looking at everything at once. You can focus on whatever books or whatever content you want to see. So, and then I'm going to take this little hamburger menu and I'm going to import the text from ChatGPT, because that's where I have this thing formatted. And I'm going to check the actual syntax and the formatting for the NPC to make sure that it's going to work, because the way they've changed this is kind of different, like a little bit different in the stat block. So I want to see if this parsing actually works. So I'm going to take, let's see. Okay, so there's a stat block that I'm going to be importing. So I'll kind of bring this over and show you this. So this is the stat block, and this will basically set the precedence here for this particular character. I want to see if this will actually regenerate or not, because it cut off right here, but it's pretty close. I mean, I don't think I need much else. But this has all the spells, it has sneak attack, it has a multi-attack clause here, it has evasion, cunning action, and then it's stats and such up here, but we'll see how this goes. Yeah. So I'm going to take this text and copy it and then paste it into Fantasy Grounds. And this is the formatting that you'd have to use if you're going to use the import tool. Not all rule sets have an importer. Matter of fact, not very many do. But 5th edition, they've built a lot of extra little tools and doodads. Because people are entering data for modules and stuff, and I don't know why they wouldn't do it for Pathfinder and the other rule sets, but it may not be as useful, or maybe it's more difficult. So I'm going to paste this into the cell on the left-hand side, and hopefully the stats are in the proper formatting, because if not, they won't parse correctly. So what I'm talking about is these ability score adjustments. If they're not in the correct order, this won't parse correctly. And I have a feeling that this may not work, so we'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and hit import, and I was correct. So these didn't come over properly because they were not in the proper order. So all this stuff here didn't parse correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of this, and I'm going to delete this. So that didn't come over properly. So what I need to do is go back into this particular conversation. So let's go into here, and this is character creation. Oops, I didn't want that. Okay, so I'm going to say fix the ability scores as they are not in the proper format. I will say to research our memory and custom knowledge, because I've given this thing so many examples. It's supposed to memorize some of the stuff, and it just, no matter what I do, it just wants to do its own thing sometimes. So we'll see if it fixes that or not. So I'll say fix the ability scores. They are not in the proper format. So we'll see. Yeah, so this is more like it. So this is going to work more. It's going to work out better than what I had before. And we don't really need these bullet points, but I don't think it will take that in consideration. Hopefully not. So we'll see. So I'm going to copy this in, hit copy, and then I'll go into Fantasy Grounds again and hit Control A, Control V, right click, clean up the text. Yeah, so it didn't grab the bullet points, and I don't see italicizing, so this should work. Let's see if this worked. Nope. So again, that format didn't work either. So this is a thing that will frustrate you when you're actually using the import tool. So the formatting that I have right now is for the actual, it's for the Fantasy Grounds legacy. So this is one of the issues that we're going to come up against when we are trying to use the parsing tool. So now I got to figure out what is the correct way to do this. So you have ability score. See the way this is right now? This is not the same. There's the mod, there's the save. So what I want to do is take this, and I'm going to make a picture of this and put it into ChatGPT and see if it can handle it. So that's one of the cool things about the AI tools is, okay, so capture region. What I'm going to do is, oops, I don't want that. So I'm going to just say, hey, do it like this and give it a picture of it. Whoops, I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is take a snapshot of the actual stat block, and I'm going to tell it to format it in this format. That way, maybe it'll have a better chance at doing this, because this isn't right. This is going to break every time. So let's see. It's because the way the ability scores are formatted, like if it's not the exact order, it's not going to parse. So let me take that, and I'm going to take this and copy and paste it into ChatGPT and say, I'm going to say the ability scores and saves are now save bonuses are now together. Let's say analyze the graphic to adjust for any text formatting changes so that it parses into the Fantasy Grounds 2024 5E Player's Handbook NPC stat block format. Boy, is that a bunch of words. Yeah, my typing sucks. That's another reason I use this, because my typing is horrible. I'm like the worst. I flunked my typing 101 class in high school. I should have probably stayed with it. I was too worried about girls and stuff back then. Okay, so hit enter, and let's see if it can handle that. So the ability scores and saves based on the analysis. Okay, so we'll see if this is actually going to work. It doesn't look like it. Well, we'll find out. So I'm going to take this. So I'm basically live testing the new formatting to see if it's going to work, because so far it hasn't. So we'll see. So we'll go here. And I think the saves are going to have to be pulled in from this other line here where it has the saving throws. We'll see. So right click, clean up text. Yeah, we'll see what it does. Nope. See, it's all 10s right there. Yeah, it's not liking the way that's formatted. So, yep, that's a problem. So, what I have to do is find a stat block that is the right format and get that going in there. But see, this isn't working right here. And I think it needs to be like three lines, not, I'll just say this didn't work out. So delete that, delete this guy. So we're actually trying to make an NPC equivalent of this player character. And the main reason I want to do that is to show you some of the differences. But you're not going to have all of this type of automation and such unless you add it manually. And one of the ways you could do that for NPCs is if you come up to the top right and you go to this, whatever the symbol is, go up to the effects. You can add those over here on the right hand side, and what you do is you drag these to the NPC record when you need automation for that particular instance. So these would be something you drag over and put on their NPC stat block when you're trying to use some of the newer automation or even some of the older stuff. So you can add your own custom stuff over here on the right. So even if you don't have it on the character sheet or built into a stat block, you can put it here in the custom effects. You can make your own and just make sure that the keywords and such and the rounds are set and all that sort of thing. So that's one way you can do this. And that's kind of what I've done with some of the newer content. I put this on here because in case I have NPCs that have reliable talent, I don't know if it functions the same way, but these keywords are going to take that information and apply it to whatever you're trying to do. So that's why I was going to test this. But right now I'm kind of on a stumbling block trying to figure out the right sort of formatting. And I had it at one time. I just don't know what I did with the conversation. I kind of lost track of it. So I won't spend much more time on this today. But anyways, so this is where you could add automation to it and went to Fantasy Grounds. So even if it's a different rule set and you know what the syntax is, if there is any, you can add it there. And it'll be available for both players and NPCs. And you just drag it to the stat block or to the combat tracker, depending on what's going on. So if I go to the combat tracker, I'm going to put this PC on here. And then if I wanted to use one of those effects on here, let's just say I didn't have something prepared, I can go into here and just drag this over and drop it, and this would put the effect on for a round. But in this case, I don't need to do that because it's already on the character sheet. So I was testing this earlier. There are reliable talent at 7th level is something that rogues now get, and it makes a lot of different saves or benefits, and it treats any number below 10 as 10. And that's one of the newer automation things that's been programmed into Fantasy Grounds. So you got to know that being that the rule set's pretty new, they still need to add in some, or if not more, of the automation. But when I built this character, pretty much everything was already done. I didn't have to put in a lot of stuff here. All these, the sneak attack stuff was already put in. Weapon mastery was mentioned, but it doesn't really show the masteries. I had to add that myself. So I just put a notation after the weapon here. And then I made my own little entries for each one of those. And some of them don't do anything but just give you a note. And I've done videos on that previously, like within the last couple weeks. But then it has evasion. That's already was automated. But nonetheless, all this stuff here was actually already on the character sheet. I didn't have to do any of this. So I would think or say that I want to say that at least half of the automation is already built in, if not more. Probably more like 65, 70%. There might be a custom build that you make where some of the automation isn't ready yet or isn't made, or you can still use some of the Rob 2E effects coding, but I think that's slowly going to become a non-issue, at least for the most part. I don't think it's going to be 100%. There's no way. But they're getting closer. Like when I built this character with drag and drop method, all this stuff was added to the sheet with the automation already built in. So I didn't have to do anything. And I think this is the direction that SmiteWorks is trying to go, because a lot of people early on, in the early days of Unity and Classic, had complained that, oh, this stuff should already be in there. Well, that was true, but no one wanted to go in and actually do all that work. But now that work's been done. So I hope eventually they'll absorb some of that stuff in there. It looks like they already have. And this newer stuff that comes out of the 5e 2024 rules, this can be added by yourself or just wait for SmiteWorks to build it in. And they'll do it. Maybe they'll be able to automate a few more things. But I'm surprised at what they do already have. And a lot of this stuff just works. You just put the, when you build up and level up your character, it just starts adding these things. And then on the Actions tab, a majority of it's already on there. So I didn't even have to do very much. I only added Nick and Vex. And all the rest of this stuff was pretty much on there. And the new sneak attack, you can substitute dice when you get a higher level of sneak attack. You have other options, like if you did a withdraw maneuver while you're doing your sneak attack, it costs you 1 die. So in other words, this character gets 4d6 on sneak attack. But if you sacrifice one of the die, then you would get this withdraw feature. So in this case, withdraw allows you to immediately move half of your speed without provoking opportunity attacks. So you kind of move away, but you sacrifice one of your damage dice. So that's the only difference there. And this usually impacts you when you get up to higher levels. So, this is something that you'll have to decide when you start leveling up your character, if you're going to use these withdraw or any of these other cunning strikes. So you have poison, you have trip, and withdraw. And if any of the cunning strikes requires a saving throw, the DC equals 8 plus your dexterity modifier and your proficiency bonus. So if you're going to use any of those, you could potentially create one of those type of things to create a saving throw. So this one already has it in there, I believe. One of these, here's the trip, already has the automation built into it. So this was already part of the character sheet build. Now, I'm not going to say or confirm that this is true of all classes, but so far on this higher level rogue, most of the automation was already built in. So I didn't have to do a whole lot there. There was something I wanted to talk about that is confusing, that's come up a couple times during on the Fantasy Grounds forum. So this particular build is a arcane trickster. He has access to cantrips and spells. So I wanted, since they've changed the mode down here on the bottom left, it can be a little bit confusing if you were used to having both the buttons. So what you have to do now is when you have spells that need to be prepared, you change the mode to preparation. And then if you go into the metadata for the spells, you just put in any value here. So I just put in 1, and that makes these little bubbles show up. And then you can select these as your prepared spells, if applicable. If you have like a cleric or a class that does not require any sort of prepared spells, that you can just cast whatever, then leave that blank. So leave this blank and it will show all the spells. But if you have a number in there and then you don't have any prepared, it's not going to show any of them. So that is going to be a little bit of confusion when people are building characters that have spellcasters. So I just wanted to point that out because we had someone on the forums kind of going, what the heck? Either the player went in and changed that number, this number here, or it was added automatically during a character build. I haven't confirmed that, but it was a warlock character, and that player didn't see their spells because there was a number 2 in here, and none of them were prepared in the preparation mode. So once you put a value in there, it requires you to prepare the spells. If there's no value in here, then it will show all the spells that you have in your repertoire. So this particular build, these are all the spells in a spell book, but he can only prepare up to so many per day or whatever. So this is why this is set up this way. But that is confusing, and this is a nuance of character creation that might come up, especially if you have spellcasters. And that's kind of why I'm going over this, because there's a bunch of little niggly things that will get you occasionally. So this effects thing here, I just built these myself based off of the information that comes from the Fantasy Grounds forums website. So if you go into Fantasy Grounds and then you look at their forums and then you go to the City Hall, this is where their announcements are for updates, changes. A lot of people say, hey, we don't even know what's updated. Well, all you have to do is go to the City Hall and you see this Fantasy Grounds Rule Set Updates 2024 support for D&D 2024. If you click on this link, it kind of gives you a brief description of what was added, but if you really want to know the patch notes, they're all right here. So all this stuff was some of the things that were added initially, and that's where I got all the syntax from. So that's where you find out what was changed or added. Now, it doesn't necessarily explain it how it works, but it gives you an idea of the things that were used and changed. Now, how that translates into your games and into the rule set, it's a different story, but at least you have an idea. So this is a rule set change. So this is stuff that was changed with the actual 5e rule set, or added in this case. So then also, if you're going to want to know about the Fantasy Grounds changes, the actual, stuff to do with Fantasy Grounds, there's another thread, and that one has to do with this Fantasy Grounds 4.5.0. And if you come in here, here's 4.5.10, here's the patch notes, and these are all the things that were done to the interface into Fantasy Grounds proper. So if you wanted to know what was added as far as the UI, like this thing, they modernized the look, the launcher, they added new dice packs, they changed some of the categories, they added an asset search, all kinds of different things. So there's 2 different things to look at when updates come up. So you have rule set changes, and then you have platform changes. So there's 2 different sections on the forums to look for that. So that's just kind of a brief or a summary communication. This doesn't necessarily mean anything to anyone unless you're either a developer or you're trying to automate something or whatever, or you're trying to figure out what was changed or added or removed. And I don't think they really go into what was moved, taken away, but they do talk about what was added. So that's a valuable thing to know when it comes to these sorts of things. So this is, again, you go into the Fantasy Grounds forums. You do have to be signed in with your account. And then you go to the city hall, and this is where their announcements are. And then all the incremental updates that happen weekly, like the little changes, maybe there's a missing graphic or a misspelled word or something, those all occur here in incremental weeks. So almost every week there's some updates or QA quality stuff that's been adjusted within a product that's already out usually. Sometimes they'll list a hot fix here. Like there might have been, like here, there was a hot fix to Savage Worlds. You know, they'll add that. That's a really quick release that doesn't go through the normal process. The 5e rule set, for example, we went in here, some of the things that I had complained about, or reported, I should say. And he actually went in and fixed some of those and then some other stuff too. So they added this, you know, some of the things with the character wizard wasn't always working correctly, and they're working on it. So it's not like they haven't done anything to it since the release. They've actually done quite a bit. And also, I think Super Teddy's on vacation, so I don't know when he's probably coming back next week or something. So Moon Wizard's kind of taken that over for a while, I think, just to kind of fill in. But once he's done and they could start looking at the other types of things that they want to work on, then he'll probably get back on that. But he did mention that he's more into making sure things work right. So that's good. I'm really glad to hear that. So this is just, updates on what is going on with the 2024 5e updates. And the only reason I'm really doing this is because it's so new that not only am I using this to help you guys out, but I'm also learning myself. I don't know everything. I'm just kind of winging it as myself. So this isn't something that's going to be overnight. You have to kind of play around with it. Just like that NPC import thing. Now I'm going to have to redo that to figure out the text formatting that's going to be required. It's something stupid. I know it's like, just the way the numbers are lined up. That's all it's going to take. So this is just a kind of an overview of some of the little things that you'll experience when you're making characters. So this little notation here where it says Nick, I actually go into the weapon properties and the mastery properties there. So if you have weapon mastery, you can benefit from those. And depending on the weapon, that's what determines what that is. And the new updated module that nice Zacchaeus had went in and fixed for me and for the rest of us is in the actual player's handbook. It used to all be combined. So if you come down to chapter 6 under weapons, this all used to be one page. So weapon proficiencies was one, and the categories. And then you have the weapon properties are separated out. And then he separated out the mastery properties, which was really helpful. So these are all the mastery things. And most of these would just be notes. There's only a couple out of this whole group here that actually can add or even benefit from automation. The rest of these are just notes. So if I was going to use the Nick properties, I've changed my character sheet down here to combat and get out of the edit mode. And then if I wanted to use that, all it is an extra attack. So I could put a reminder so that when I use my dagger, it'll remember to add the second attack, but that's all it is. It's just another attack, essentially. And then the Vex one actually has a little bit of syntax, which is granting you advantage if you hit and damage your target. So I just made an if type automation. So if vexed, then the attacker or the person that's going to target gets advantage on their next attack roll. And then it expires after the attack. So this is just something you can add if you really want to, but it's not required. And then all this other stuff, like I said earlier, was automatically already on here, or if it could be automated, it already was. So that's pretty cool. The only thing I miss really about some of the Rob Toohey effects coding was the descriptors, which you can put in yourself. It takes a little time, but you can go into the spell description and you can look at it. You could say, in parentheses, you could say 30 feet. So you know the range, if that's applicable to that spell. And I don't see anything else on here. So then you just go to the next one. Here's disguise self. So maybe, you would add some notes there. So it's self, and it's 1 action, 1 hour. So you just put probably like an S in parentheses. Featherfall, 60 feet. So that way when you're playing, you're not having to look that up. So you can do these little things like this to make it easier on yourself. So if you had previously purchased some of the Rob 2Es, and I don't know if I haven't worked with the Grim Press product, but I think they put that in there. But anyway, so that's just to have the range available, just so you can see it right at a glance without having to click on and open these up every time you cast a spell. So there's another 60 feet. So this is just a way for spellcasters or anyone with some sort of range or important kind of spells or anything that has notations on it, is to really speed things up. So this is self, this is shield. So we could put an S there. So you kind of make your own little notations on the spells themselves, so you don't have to. So this is concentration, and it is 60 feet. So I would add both of those in the descriptor. So 60 and then C for concentration. So that's just so you know that, what these spells have as far as requirements. So this is 10 feet concentration for friends. So again, I would just put the notation in there in parentheses. And then when you're players, or if you are the player, this is something that, let's see, it's concentration. So this is something that, and then already have bonus action for Mage Hand, but I didn't put the range in there, so let me do that. And the reason it's a bonus action is because this particular build allows for that for this character. They use Mage Hand quite a bit, and that's covered in this Mage Hand Ledger Domain or Demand. So if you look at here, it says when you cast Mage Hand, you cast it as a bonus action. So that's why. And then you can control the hand, and through it, you can also make dexterity sleight of hand check. So you can actually have it pickpocket stuff. So that's kind of cool, but I didn't put the range in there. So that'll help with, later on when I go to use it. Same thing with this. This is 120 feet. So I can send a message 120 feet away. So this is where you can make life easier on yourself, especially spellcasters and stuff. They have a lot of ranged effects. And alter self, this is probably self, yep. So just go through and make these changes for the betterment of your experience on the table. Now you can go through your entire library and update it and do whatever you want, or just do it by character. The only thing I could say about this is you'll have to recreate it again. So if you make your own spell book, like it's dragging copies of it and kind of make your own groups over here in the spells area, you can save all your edits and stuff. Just kind of make your own group and then drag the spells over as you work on them in each group. Because right now they're sorted by level, they're sorted by if they're ritual or not, and they're sorted by source and then by version. So if you tag them properly, and they are tagged, you can actually create another tag or something and then put it in your own group so that they will sort. That way you can use those instead of the generic ones. So these are just little things that I picked up along the way, and I think some of you already know this, but like here's a touch type thing. So invisibility, just touch. Mind Spike probably has a range, so let's see. It does 120 feet, and it does take concentration, so 120 feet, and then we'll put the letter C there. Mirror image is self. So we will put that in there, an S. So you start doing stuff like this, and it's going to take a lot less time for you to do that spell casting and when you're playing in your game. So that's just some things you can do to it's like another nuance to this characters is those sort of things. So I'm going to come over to inventory, and here's another nuance. When you're adding stuff to, when I say stuff, I mean gear, weapons, that sort of thing. When you're adding these things one at a time, or even if it's a kit and then you got to add a bunch of other stuff, it's going to take some time. So what you want to do is, if you can, if you're the GM, is go ahead and make your own treasure parcels that have the content that you want. So what I'm saying is, for instance, I made a kit for the Arcane Trickster, and this has specific items for a specific build. And then all I have to do is drag this thing in there, and it populates just about everything you need. So I just did that for myself because I got tired of going in there and looking for all this stuff and dragging it over. So what you can do is build your own parcels. You can base it off profession, class, race, necessity, whatever you want. And then later on, you can export it as a module. That way you can use it in other games for character creation. And you can also make it so players can just drag this kit over to their character if they kind of know what's going on with it. So this may be like, I was going to make a camping thing, like an outdoor and an urban type thing. So all I would do here is, I want to do like an outdoor survival thing. I don't know. We'll call it camping kit. Okay, so this is going to be like something that most characters would pick. Not all, but most. Especially if you're going to be out in the wilderness or that sort of thing. So this is kind of like the explorer's kit, right? It's very similar. But what I would do is come into items and just kind of think about the gear that you want. So right away, tent, right? I want some sort of tent or shelter. Let's get the basics here. Water skin. And let's go with, we want rations, right? We need a little bit of food. So I'm not sure how many days we'll put in there, but we'll at least say 10 days or 5, however you want to do it. And then we're going to do, I think it was the tinderbox to start fires. So here's your tinderbox. Now you can decide what type of light source. So in this case, I would probably say torch. But if in an urban kit, I'd probably say oil and lantern. So here's a torch. And then I'd get 10 of those. And let's think about this. So what else? Rope, maybe? So here's some rope. In case you need to put up a tarp or tie something up. And I don't know, cooking utensils. I don't know if that's a thing or not. What is this? Oh, that's an artisan tool, so probably not. But you use it to flavor food, detect spoiled or poisoned foods, that sort of thing. I don't think that would be part of that, but nonetheless, this would be like a really good camping kit. And then, of course, a backpack. It's an empty backpack. And there you go. So there's your camping kit, right? So this way, when you're building your character, you don't have to drag all these things individually onto the equipment tab. You can just drag this whole thing and it will populate the entire sheet. So that saves a lot of time in the long run. So spend the time and go through and make your own kits. Like, let's say you always play a wizard, right? So let's make a basic wizard's kit. And it doesn't have to be for a wizard. It can be for any, arcane spellcaster. So this was the Arcane Trickster kit, which is going to be kind of the same thing, right? Except for I put weapons in here and stuff. But if you wanted it to be more for just a generic type thing, you can, take the weapons out if you want, however you want to do it. Let's do a gladiator kit just for the heck of it. So gladiators, oops, I didn't want to do that. So I want to make this. This is a parcel, by the way, that I'm making. So here's a gladiator. And I was going to see if I can put this on the Forge. I don't think I can, but I'm going to ask, because all it is a Fantasy Grounds thing. It's not necessarily giving anyone anything, because you still need the player's handbook. But I think I might do one based on the SRD when that comes out. And this will make this character creation a lot faster. And Rob already kind of had this for class and backgrounds, but now that's changed. So that probably needs to be updated. But for species and for your class options, and that's also through the character wizard. You get those options kind of anyway. So this is just for like for using drag and drop, I guess. So let's go with the gladiator kit. If you were going to use, and I'm going to include some weapons too, just so you have at least a base options here. So let's go with a net. So nets are no longer, I don't think they're weapons anymore, but they do allow, it has the rules here on how it works. So I don't think it classified as a weapon anymore, but it's still an item. We're going to do a trident, because that's a typical kind of, so you may not use it, but it's part of the kit. We'll go with a dagger. Everyone needs a knife in a fight. And let's go with studded leather. I don't think that's too much to ask for. Studded leather is a good start for armor. Gives you mobility, but a little extra protection. And maybe a pouch. I don't know if that's needed, but we'll put that in there, because you're not going to have a backpack in the arena. This is kind of more geared around the arena fighting, I guess. And then maybe caltrops. So if you're allowed to use that, you might have that in your pouch and use that to drop on the ground, so if someone comes after you, kind of mess them up. You can also do the marbles or the bearings if you wanted to. And I think there is a costume, which is something that might come into play for gladiator. So you might have a specific makeup and a helmet and a certain kind of attire, like maybe you have a theme, so that costume might come in handy. But I don't think you need too much more. I think that's pretty good. That's a good start. And you can always modify the inventory after the fact, but once you have most of this in there, then you can just kind of swap out the weapons, that sort of thing. But having these basics in here saves some time. And even if you have to replace the weapons, that's still, saving you time for enough to look it up and drag it over. So we're kind of doing this ahead of time, I guess. So that's a gladiator kit. There's a camping kit. I made an arcane trickster kit, which is going to be more customized to my interpretation of the build and how I want that. Maybe you want a scout kit or a guide, like a survival kit, I guess. So survival kit would be a lot like the camping kit, but it might contain other things. You might make a burglary kit where it has like a crowbar, a pouch, maybe those ball bearings, grappling hook, rope. You can add that stuff in. You can make your own stuff too, but that's when you start getting into custom content, and it just takes a lot longer. I just want to use what's already there, but if you really have to, you can make your own items up and add those too. But then you start getting into creating items, which is very time consuming. So this alone is already enough work for me. So this is just a way to kind of, I guess, to make your building process. So let's do a battle medic kit. So let's do a medic kit. We'll call it medic. So we're going to make a new group, and we'll call it, we'll just say medic kit. Okay, so I can call it whatever, healer kit, but there's already kind of a name for that. So let's go ahead and look at the kits here. So there's a herbalism kit and a healer's kit. So that might be the only two of those things you need. Let's grab a pouch, just in case. Let's go with maybe a holy symbol. Let's see if there is such thing. Yeah, holy symbol. So you might use that to give someone their last rites if they die or whatever for triage. And let's go with, you know what? We're going to give them 1 potion of healing. I wouldn't normally do that to start, but I think 1 potion of healing is fair for that kit. It's a little, makes it a little bit over the top, but I think that's a cool touch there. And let's think about what else. Oh, we might need a rope, almost like to help pull people out of, like if they fall down a cliff or something like that. So like search and rescue, I guess. And maybe one, or if you guys can think of something that would go in the medic kit, let me know. But I don't think there needs to be a whole bunch more in there. You got a healer's kit, an herbalism kit, holy symbol, potion of healing, pouch, and rope. I mean, I don't know what else you'd. Oh, maybe, well, water skin for sure. We need to give someone water. And maybe rations, I guess. Food or rations. So if someone's starving or, they haven't eaten in days, maybe just put 5 days worth of that so it's not too heavy. So you can do stuff like this to enhance your character creation process to make it easier on you. So that's just making little kits to drag to your character sheet so you don't have to spend all afternoon looking stuff up. And once you explain how this works to your characters, they can look at the kits and then, you could share that with them in whatever module you build and say, okay, these are the kits, these are what you can choose from. And that way it's already kind of preordained, that players can still ask to swap weapons out and stuff. I mean, that's not a big deal. So maybe a blanket. That would be the only thing I can think of on top of, all this other stuff. Yeah, so here's a blanket. So this is kind of like your medic search and rescue kit here. So if you had someone that was down and out or you needed to help somebody, even if you weren't a healer, an actual cleric, you would have enough stuff here to help someone out, help stabilize them, that sort of thing. And there is a healer feat. So if you go into feats, and if you have this feat, it gives you some enhancements. So it says you gain the following benefits. Battle medic, what do you know? If you have a healer's kit, you can expend 1 use of it and tend to a creature within 5 feet of yourself as a utilize action. That creature can expend 1 of its hit point die, and you then roll that die. The creature regains a number of hit points equal to the roll plus your proficiency bonus. So that's kind of new. And then healing rerolls is whenever you roll a die to determine the number of hit points you restore with a spell or with this feat's battle medic benefit, you can re-roll the die if it rolls ones, and you must use the new rolls. And this is automated. I check it. So if this is on your feats list over here in your over here in your features, or in this section, or up here in feats, it will work. So even if you're not a cleric, you have this healer thing here, this would be useful for a battle medic. So that's kind of cool. So this medic kit would help you, build a character that has that sort of theme to it. So I do like that. So these are just examples of the different types of things that you might build. Maybe you have a ninja kit or some kind of stealth kit or whatever. So let's do that. Let's make a ninja type thing. Doesn't have to be ninja, but let's just say like maybe it's martial arts or something. I don't know. So I don't know what to call it. We could call it a ninja kit, I guess. We'll say ninja kit because that kind of explains it. It's kind of self-explanatory. Even though you may not be a ninja, you might want the stuff out of there. So let's go with the grappling hook and all that sort of stuff. So here's the grappling hook. Let's go with the rope. We're going to go with those darts, the throwing darts, like the stars or whatever they are. So dart. So this is kind of a weapon choice. And we'll get 10 of those. And then we want a quarterstaff. quarter. So you get like a staff, throwing stars. You know, I thought about a blade, but there's so many different kinds of swords that I don't even want to go there. I just want to give them basics. So maybe a knife for close quarter combat, or in this case, it'll be dagger. But I don't think the new player's handbook has all the exotic weapons yet. So you'd have to add those if you want to add actual ninja stuff. And let's go with, this isn't really a survival thing. It's more of a combat related thing. So, oh, maybe a net for capturing and, you know, laying it down on somebody. I don't know if there's any smoke or anything. So let's try it. Oil. I want a vial of oil. So you might use this to throw at somebody and set them on fire or whatever. You know, so these are just ideas. This may not work for you, but this will give you a kind of a start if you wanted to be a ninja. Let's try clothes here. We don't have a ninja clothes, but we can add some traveler's clothes here. We don't have the ninja gi or whatever they call it, the ninja outfit. I don't know what else you would need. So you kind of have a melee weapon, close quarter weapon, you have a ranged weapon, you have rope, you have a net, you have some clothing, an oil flask. I'm trying to think of some. Oh, you might want those caltrops. Yeah, for pursuit, like someone's chasing you. And then, of course, a pouch. So maybe that's all you would need for that. I don't know. But just kind of gives you an idea of the types of things that you might build for your table. So when you got new players or when you have to build characters, you're not spending as much time as I am now during the character creation process. So this will help with that. But this is just little nuances that you're going to find out over the months and years and weeks that you play, is all these little things are going to add up and make things better for you. So the hand crossbow is actually a light single-handed weapon, but in most cases, light crossbows and heavy crossbow will take two hands. So you got to change that primary hand here. And then, of course, your ammo is set here when you put this value in here, but it doesn't change the inventory. So after a time, maybe if you can remember, you go in and you can actually update the quantity or notate it on your character sheet, because it actually changes the weight, but not that much. So something like that I wouldn't sweat too much. But rations, you know, 5 of those equals 2 pounds. So I imagine 10 would be 4 pounds. So if you're crunching for weight and that sort of thing, you might have to do that. But like 10 darts only weighs 1 pound. So it's not that big of a deal. But nonetheless, you know, you want to keep track of that stuff eventually. And then I've used to do things like for like potions. Like if you have a potion of healing, you can add that to your kit here or to your automation. So if you go to inventory, does he have a potion of healing? No, this one doesn't. But if you have one, you can add the automation on this page here and you can set up the usages, your preparation. And there is a new delimiter now for certain abilities that have changed, like long rest, short rest, or both. Like like you get these restorations that are kind of partial and then full. Like if you do a short rest, you get one of your usages back. You do a long rest, you get all of your usages back. So there's a new delimiter called dual, which means both. So there are a few feats and a few things that would require you to change that to a number and then to dual. I don't remember what they are. There's some kind of healing thing or something. I don't remember. But there you go. There's some more nuances there. And what I noticed is on this first page, it will add the move if you have something. So in a couple cases, you can swim or climb. So it'll just say climb or swim up here. I had another build that someone had that ability, and it added that just as a notation. And when you're building your character for the first time, or if you're a GM or player, go through these, open these links up and take a look and see what they do. So initiative proficiency. When you roll initiative, you can add your proficiency bonus to the roll, which is similar to what the bards got, and for the 5e legacy. Initiative swap. You can immediately after your roll, if you ask and you talk to your player and your GM, you can switch your initiative with one of your players on the same combat. So that's kind of cool. You can't make the swap if you or the ally is incapacitated, but you could switch that. And what that does is if you have this feat, it automatically will go into, it'll add these. This is a new thing here for initiative. There's a little proficiency box here. So when you have this, it adds that to your character automatically. So that's kind of cool. So there is some automation in the feats that are hard coded in. I don't know yet like what all is hard coded, what isn't, but to me, I think more of it is and isn't for the newer stuff. So that's good, because we don't want to have to do every single thing, but it looks like most of this content that you're getting out of the new player's handbook for the 2024 or 5e stuff is automated. So that's good. There used to be nothing. Like you used to have to do everything like all yourself. And that's kind of where Rob came up with all those effects coding things, is they got tired of trying to harness the power of the virtual tabletop, but yet having to add it to all their character sheets all the time. So that's kind of what I'm getting into here, is kind of making your own sort of notes and your own way of addressing some of the shortcomings of the rule set or of the character build process. But for the most part, it seems to be going okay. I think that a lot of the bugs that were there are starting to get squashed. I'm still having some problems with the character wizard. There's some options that don't come up or whatever, or even in this case, I've had one that was broken on both the drag and drop and the character wizard. So those, you're going to make sure you report those to the Fantasy Grounds forums and make sure you give them a good description. Let them know if you're using legacy or the newer content. And if you are playing in a legacy game and you're noticing a lot of problems, in the options, make sure that you have the setting here for rules version on legacy, and then disable your extensions until those can be fixed or updated or both. And then that should solve some of the problems. Now, there may be some leftover garbage from extensions or stuff that you put on your character long ago that you forgot about. Those can end up staying with the character no matter what you do. So that's one of the risks of using extensions. Depending on how they're written and what they do, they may leave behind garbage. So try a different campaign and turn on your extensions one at a time, that sort of thing. And that way you can tell which ones are breaking. And also there's some that, like I said, it leaves kind of like junk behind that can't be fixed because it's overriding the base functionality of Fantasy Grounds, the new base functionality. So there's a lot of complications with extensions and characters and such. So characters are where things break the most, in my opinion, because that's where it starts. And if this isn't right, then it's going to be broken all the way through. And so that's one of the things I suggest, that as a new user or even as a GM, get good at making characters and understanding the base functionality before you start adding all that other stuff on there. Because if something goes wrong, or if you don't notice that something's not calculating right or whatever, you're not going to know. And that's not always a bad thing, but it just isn't D&D anymore, right? It's a bunch of hodgepodge homebrew stuff thrown in there. So some of the automation is pretty decent, though. There are some things I wish they would incorporate into Fantasy Grounds, and there's other stuff that I just think is kind of a left-handed mushroom softener. It's just something you don't really need, and it might only apply to one character, one spell at one game. So those kind of extensions I try to stay away from. And as a matter of fact, I don't hardly even use any anymore, because I got tired of chasing updates and fighting with people about it, and just get sick of it. But anyways, folks, you guys have a good weekend. Hopefully this helps a little bit. I know I kind of yammered on and kind of jumped around, but These are the types of little nuances that you want to start getting used to after you've built your character. Like, when you want to go in and customize it, like I actually went in and put some pretty good notes in here for this particular bad guy, because I'm going to play this like a villain. So I wanted him to have, some decent stuff. I even went so far as, making custom artwork for it. So there's things you can do to make the characters a lot more interesting and a lot more useful. And then you can also make Fantasy Grounds work for you instead of fighting it. Because that's what most of us end up trying to do, one thing, and we just give up because we can't do that one thing, and that's just super unintuitive in some cases, but it doesn't help when you're not understanding what's going on. And then there's changes going on in the background, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. It's harder to get things right than it is to make things go wrong. So just get to know the character sheet and how to build them from scratch, how to use the character wizard, how to update them, how to automate things if you need it yourself, and then also how to customize and make yourself some tools to make this job easier. Because in the long run, it's going to help, but short term, it's going to be a lot of looking stuff up. Like, for instance, if you go into the books here, into Player's Handbook, to start looking up stuff, you're doing that during gameplay. It takes a lot of extra time to do that, and it's not a big problem. It's kind of similar around a table, when you're looking through rule books and stuff. But if you're going to harness the power of the virtual tabletop, you want that stuff to be at your fingertips. There's no reason why you should have to be scouring through all these books if you can simply link the content to your character somehow. So for instance, weapon mastery, it used to just give you this description here, and that's kind of what you're seeing here. But what I'll do is I'll unlock it, and down at the bottom here, I'm going to actually add the shortcut to that information for weapon mastery. So if I come here to chapter 6 under weapons, and I come over to this page where those are separated out, I'll link that here for my players. So when they go to look that up, it's not digging through the player's handbook. It's right here. And this is the kind of stuff that drives me nuts with rule books, because it'll say, you get this, and whenever you finish a long rest, you can change weapons of you choose, because you can have 3 of these masteries at a time, and that expands over your course of your career. But it says, you get this training and stuff, but it doesn't tell you what. When I first looked at this, I didn't even know it was dependent on the weapon. So weapons determine the mastery and, of course, the actual feature. But there was I had to go and look it up in the player's handbook just to figure out what that meant and what it is. But now if you link this here, it's right at your fingertips. You don't have to sit there and dig through the whole book. And this is the kind of thing that I think can be improved with content, especially if you have someone doing a conversion. Put in those extra links if you know what you're doing. Unfortunately, not everyone's connected to the content. So if you don't use Fantasy Grounds that much and you're just doing the conversion, you're not going to know to do all this stuff. You're just going to put in there what's given to you. But when you're actually playing and using the content and customizing it, you can add these kinds of things in here for convenience. Like, for instance, what really pissed me off or irritated me was, for instance, sneak attack. Okay, so this gives you the details as to what it does, but it doesn't give you the table. It says the extra damage increase as you gain rogue levels as shown in the sneak attack column of the rogue feature table. No link. So I actually added this link, and if you scroll down, there's the table, the sneak attack damage. So as you level up, that increases. But it just irritates the crap out of me. I got to go in there and look for it. And, it's not the end of the world, right? But during gameplay, it slows things down. So I went ahead and linked it here, so I at least have that. But on another character, I actually rebuilt the table. So I don't even have to look at that link. It's already built into the description of sneak attack. Why make people go to 3 spots? Or, it's like, go here and then go there, go over here. By that time, you don't even want to deal with that crap. You just like, forget it. So there is some advantages to using virtual tabletop. Why not take advantage of that and link those together? And the same thing with PDFs. I hate it when there's no bookmarks in there and you got to go through the whole thing and search for something. It'd be nice if they reference a table or a picture or a map or whatever, that they hyperlink it inside of the PDF. You don't have to do that, but it really makes the content more valuable. And that's the difference between buying the hardback and buying the virtual version. And if you're not getting any sort of benefit out of it, why even do it? So I think by adding these things in there helps. But it depends on the person who's doing the conversion and how familiar they are with the content. If you don't know the adventure and you don't really know Fantasy Grounds that much, or the rule set you're working on, you're probably not going to know to make those connections. But I'll tell you what, when you're running a game or when you're a player and you need to know that information, it's a real pain in the butt and a time sink if you got to look up every single little thing when you don't need to. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. So these are just little nuances that you will learn as you start using the platform more and more. Yeah, exactly. I would love to have all sneak attack options appear as the character. Exactly. But there may not be a way to automate that very easily. And the flip side of it is, yes, we can build our own, which I think is better, because then you'll know where it is, you'll remember it. But I think what happens is when you get too complex, like having things linked, like I'm complaining about now, is that more things can break. So if something's wrong, it's wrong in more than one place. And I think that might be one of the reasons why they don't do that, is because, one, it's not actually following the content that's presented, but it also presents, you're adding more time to the development, but you're also adding more breaking points. That could possibly be why. But I myself would go through that and put all those attack options in there. This one actually did. This sneak attack, it actually did add those. So someone did it for sneak attack for the rogue, which I think is really cool. The cost was already there. It added sneak attack and then all these options. So I didn't have to do anything, which is really good. That's what I want. But not having that table is annoying. However, what I did find out is for sneak attack, when you are using it, depending on your level and if you have access to that table, which is what drives me nuts. So what I would do for this case is I would put 4d6 as a note. Instead of making this attack roll 4d6, I would make this a note. And if you're going to use one of these other add-on effects, that you only right-click and add the number of die for the damage. So once you do a sneak attack, if you have a d6, you pick it up, you right-click 3 times instead of 4, and drop that damage onto your target. If you leave it at 4d6, you don't really have an option. And that's something I come across just recently knowing that. So when I take this 4d6, if I put that into the code here, that's not a problem. But if I want to use one of these other maneuvers, how do you remove the extra die? You can't. So that's why I'm thinking just leave it as 1d6. And depending on what you're doing, you pick up your damage die and you right click on the mouse and to add or not add the proper amount of die, because these other maneuvers take away one of your die, your damage die. So that's something I learned recently for sneak attack, is I did put this in as 4d6, but now I'm thinking, I may just want to leave it as 1d6 and not add that extra die in there, and just leave it as a note for my players so they know how many dice to add depending on a given situation. Because this wasn't as complex before. Now it's a little bit more complex because you have poison, trip, withdraw. So these are other options. So the cunning strike, essentially. So if you go to your abilities, go to cunning strike. At level 5, your sneak attack gets it more advanced. So that's what that's all about, is the cunning strike. So those were actually added automatically. But what I don't understand is why this isn't in here. This should be in here as a descriptor. So if I go to preparation, go to edit mode, I'm going to take this sneak attack and copy this in here. That way we know that he got that feature, even though it doesn't do anything mechanically. I would do that for my players, but in the description of each one of these is the cunning strike note. So it's not like you're missing anything. It's just kind of confusing where these things came from. But nonetheless, what I would do honestly is take cunning strike and I'd break these out separately, like these different actions, and then link them to this. That way, when you take this, it's going to give you all of these little action things here. And you can actually put those in spells. So let me see if those are actually in here or not. Yeah, they're not. So you could take these and add as a category. We'll say cunning strike. And then that'll be the category. And then what we'll do is drag those over. So you might have this poison and not sneak attack, trip, withdraw, so that way you have it, and then you would link those to here instead of having it separate. And it's okay, this makes sense because all you're doing is keeping track of how much it cost. But it's nice to have that kind of stuff available for your table. And then if you only have one of these, or for some reason you have a little bit more flexibility. But this was already added in, so that was nice. I didn't have to do that. This is already built into the back end of Fantasy Grounds, which is nice. But there is no definitive list as to what's automated, what isn't, what's hard-coded, what needs to be added. All that stuff is going to take time to go through, and you're just going to have to build characters and see what happens, because there isn't any way to really document that, because there's so many different build paths and so many different options that it would take forever to document all that. Forever and a day. But this is the sneak attack thing is just a note for me now, instead of making it 46, because now you have all these other options at level 5. So once you get to level 5, you may want to change that or something. But for the other levels, for like levels 2, 3, 4, you probably just put in the full damage, because you won't have these other maneuvers yet. So anyways, you guys take care. I think I kind of rambled enough, but just kind of give you some ideas of little nuances. Reliable talent does work, folks. So if you do, hold on, let me show you this. So when you do the skills check, let's just say the DC challenge rating was 13, okay? And you're going to use, it has to be something you're skilled at or proficient with. So let's say you're going to lie to somebody and you have to beat a 13. So when you go to roll this into the chat window, the 6 automatically becomes a 10. It dropped a lower number, the 6, and it added the 10. So now that's 15. So you made it. Yeah, no problem, Pennington, no problem. But this is just to let you know that some of the stuff is working, actually. So you got to check it out. You got to test it. You'll find out over time.